Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent uh-oh experiences in business.
Learn what their uh-oh cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again.
All right. Welcome, Cohesive Leaders. Join with Dr. Troy remotely, and we got John Little here. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Well, we wouldn't have it any other way.
So, John, we're going to start with a question of...
All right.
Okay, we got a little delay. So, John, little question of share something with the audience that is something that is not on your resume, LinkedIn profile, your About Us, back of your book jacket. So let us know a hobby, interest, something unique about yourself.
Whenever I get this question, I think the most unique thing about myself is that I love to travel. I've traveled for business for years. But personally, I have traveled to 43 U.S. states, 18 countries. I had a goal of hitting 50 states by the age of 50, and then COVID happened. And my birthday happened in there, so didn't quite make it. So I still got 7 states to go.
You can make it happen.
Yes. The states aren't going anywhere. It's just a matter of me getting
That's right. That's really great. Well, what do you love most about the travel?
It's a couple of things. One, if you're here in the U.S., like there are so many amazing things that you can go and do and see and experience, and you don't have to pull out your passport. You don't even have to have a passport. You just have to have a willingness to travel. So I loved going to places and seeing things in person that I've seen on TV or in books. I loved interacting with new and different people. I love like the different perspectives that people have around the country. It's always fascinating for me to hear. And, I live in South Florida. I moved down here 20 years ago. I grew up in upstate New York and kind of made my way down the East Coast because I don't believe in cold weather. And so, when I talk to people from around the country, they're like, oh, you're so lucky that you live in South Florida. It's like, no, that was a conscious choice. Like, I don't want to be cold. I don't want to shovel snow. I don't I would rather sweat than shovel any day of the week. And I love 75 degrees at Christmas. So it was a conscious choice that I made. Luck had absolutely nothing to do with it. But just talking about, different and hearing people's different perspectives and experiences. And of course the food, right? Let's be honest. The food is also a great reason to travel and have different experiences.
And so what's one place that you've traveled here in the U.S. that you would highly recommend to people?
Couple of places. If you're on the East Coast, Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., just to see the history of the country. Like the fact that you can see the Liberty Bell is crazy, right? You can actually walk up to it and be as close to you and 10 feet away from something that is, I don't do math in public very well, but 250 years old, right? And it's still there. Like this was something that was foundational to us as a nation. Going to DC and seeing the Washington Monument, seeing the White House, seeing the U.S. Capitol, seeing all those iconic things that you see in TV and movies, and they're just there and they're accessible for the most part. Like that, those are amazing. The Grand Canyon. If you're into nature, it's just seeing that. Next week I'm going to be in New Orleans again, and again taking me back to the food. There's so many different places, so many different things. It's impossible to pinpoint one, but that is especially if you have access to the East Coast, DC and Philadelphia are musts. You have to go there.
Well, I love the fact that you were sharing about the history of the country. I think that really seeing the state our nation's capital is really important. And I think the Grand Canyon, what a masterpiece it is out there. I loved seeing it I've seen both the North Rim and the South Rim, and really prefer the North Rim of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
in a little over a year, I'll be rafting the Grand Canyon. We just booked that, so I'll be doing a
Nice.
10-day raft trip down there. So I'm excited about that one. So
That's amazing. You're more adventurous than I am. I like to see things from a certain perspective, but I celebrate those who have a little bit more bravery than me.
I've done it from the rim, and I've walked down, and now it's
Yep.
now for me, it's time to see the rest of it. So
There you go.
right, next question
That's it.
is,
So, John, one of the things that we also
go for it, Dr. Troy.
Okay. So, John, one of the things that we like to do is let folks know that we've found a little something about you, but now we'd like to know a little bit more about your characteristics, words that you would use to describe you, or words that others would describe you that you hope they would say when you are out of the room. So, this is not your role. This is not the titles and the things that you do at this point. This is just talking about who you are as a person. What are some descriptive words that people might use to describe you?
Yeah, I've been really intentional about trying to align who I am with kind of the values that I have, and that helps to define not only my professional brand, but my personal brand. So I would say kind, caring, consistent, and outcome oriented. Like I hope that anybody who interacts with me, whether it be, a clerk at the grocery store or one of the clients that I coach, hopefully that something there shines through, that I'm kind, that I'm caring, that I'm consistent, that I'm outcome oriented. Those are the things that I think that people say about me when I'm not around. And if they do, then that means that I've showed up in the way that I wanted to.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome that they especially when they say those things when you're not in the room, right? That's the goal, right? What now are some roles? What is your career trajectory? What are the interests you've had, different hats you've worn? You can start with family as well, but what are the hats and roles you've had, so we get to know that side of you as well?
Yeah, I always describe my background as a career jungle gym. It certainly was not a linear path. So growing up, I was always into sports. I played 3 sports through high school. I was always, oriented around something sports wise. And so getting ready to go to college, I thought I was going to be a phys ed major until I discovered another area, which was sports management and administration. So when I went to college in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Winston-Salem State University. And my degree path was sports management with a focus of sports communications. And I had a really specific goal that I wanted to work in sports television, and I wanted to work at CNN Sports in Atlanta, because again, don't believe in being cold, and ESPN is in Bristol, Connecticut. So I was super intentional about that. And so I accomplished that goal. I got an internship my senior year. I started working at CNN Sports about a year later. And throughout that whole process of the next 10 years, that was a big part of my identity and who I was sports centered. I'm still a sports fan. You can see in the background that I'm a lifelong fan of the New York Mets and a lifelong fan of the Washington Now Commanders. They had a name change, a couple of name changes over the past few years. So that's a big part of my identity, is me as a sports fan. So that's a hat that I consistently wear. And even as I've moved out of sports television, because I got tired of getting off at 3 o'clock in the morning, I continued to kind of go through that space of leadership, because those are the roles that I held in that capacity. Those are the roles that I held. So throughout my career, my hats have always been leadership hats. So I went into banking for a little while. From there, I went into more of a leadership coaching role. I did leadership development for a large organization, actually, that's based in Charleston, Graystar. You've probably heard of them. So I did leadership development for them for the East Coast, and now I'm an executive coach. And so kind of everything along my path has had that coaching, has had that leadership lens. And a lot of the things really still tie back to my passion and love for sports. I use sports analogies all the time. In my personal life, I'm a dad of a 10-year-old son, and he's got a little bit of a different path. He was diagnosed at an early age on the autism spectrum. And so being not only a dad, but a special needs dad, is something that is another hat that I proudly wear, and trying to find ways to ensure that his experience is the best experience that he has, and allows me to see the world through a different set of eyes and a different set of experiences that don't really mirror what I did growing up, because he has a different lens on the world. So kind of all of those hats, as well as being a friend, as well as being a son, as well as being an uncle, and all of those things. They still kind of lean back to your previous question of how I like to show up. And I really hope to show all those things in all those different roles.
Yeah, it's really awesome. Really great. Thanks for sharing that, giving individuals. And so, part of this little exercise that we did by having you share is that oftentimes people feel more identified by the roles that they play than they do by the characteristics of who they are. And I think it's just so important, like the individuals who listen to our podcast or individuals who work at an organization who might be emerging into a leadership role, or maybe they have some leadership role and they just want to expand their knowledge or their information around it. And what we try to do is to make sure that they know that people like you, a very accomplished leader, you're a person. So regardless of the story that you tell or the things that happen to you or the success that you have, we all begin with that human journey. And that's why it's so important to bring that up. Now, we know
Yeah,
that
Dr.
you've prepared a little story for us today. Yes, sir.
Oh, I was just going to share that. That's one of the principles that I talk to my clients about, is how important it is for the people that you're leading to know you as a person and not as a position, because that's how they're going to engage with you. That's how they're going to trust you. And that's how you really get that influence. So didn't mean to cut you off, but when you said that, that just jumped to mind, especially for young and emerging leaders. That's such a concept to grasp early on, is that when they see you as a position, see you as a person and not as a position, it just makes the leadership journey so much easier and so much better connected for everybody involved.
Yeah, great. And don't apologize for cutting off, because I think I'm on a delay here where I am. So that's probably creating a little bit more of a challenge on the podcast than what we would normally have. But I think it's a good place for us to transition to your experience. We would like to know what you are sharing, and realistically, you might share something about business or personal, but we really want to know how it impacts you, what that experience was. And I think we had a little bit of a hint at that with some material that you sent us ahead of time, although we didn't prep too much for it because we want these conversations to be really natural. So go ahead and share with everyone your experience that you have for us today.
Yeah, the experience was also it was like a bucket of cold water to the face, which often happens in experiences. So it was when I was at CNN, and I had been on a nice kind of trajectory path. From the first year that I was there, one of the roles that I was able to step into was that as an intern coordinator. So I was responsible for bringing in our college interns, and I was, a year and a half out of college myself. So that was a lot of responsibility for a young age, but I was able to succeed in that and find some great people that we brought in, and people that we hired, and people that went on to different areas, within the network. And so as we continued to grow and my career continued to grow, I continued to get opportunities to lead and opportunities to step up, and to a point where I was in a role of a supervisor of all of our editors. And what happened was, that was the first time that I've been in a supervisor or a leadership role. And I was 27 at the time. So I was still, relatively young, but I had always had, again, having a sports background. I played quarterback in high school. That was many, many pounds ago. But so I was in a leadership space to where I was used to being the one that people would come to, people that would look to. So being a leader wasn't so much different, but being a leader of people in that context was a lot more challenging than I think I thought that it was at the time and going in. And I had two models of leaders who I had worked with. One was kind of that leader who led by fear and would kind of, yell at everybody. And even when you did something good, like you didn't get congratulated because you were supposed to do it. And then I had another leader who was just so insecure that it was impossible for them to make a decision and impossible for anybody to buy into them. And so when I stepped into that role, I thought, all right, I'm going to shoot right down the middle. I don't want to be this extreme. I don't want to be that extreme. I just want everybody to like me. So I tried to get everyone to like me. I tried to be everybody's friend. I tried to just, be the neutral party all the time. And I got called into our boss's office. And essentially I was told that I was doing a terrible job, that nobody on the team trusted me, that nobody on the team thought that I had any backbone, that nobody on the team that I was leading really was buying into me as a leader, because they thought that I was playing favorites with everybody else. And they thought that I was just kind of wishy-washy and I didn't really stand for anything. And like that hurt, because it was kind of the opposite of what I was trying to do. But that big moment to me was like, I'm not leading. I'm appeasing everybody, but I'm not actually leading anybody. So from kind of from that moment on, and eventually it was at a point where I was no longer in that position. I still stayed within the department, still stayed within the group, but I just wasn't in that leadership role anymore. And so that was hard. It was, not only was it frustrating to not be in that role, but it was also kind of embarrassing, because I still had to work with all the people that I was previously leading, and I wasn't leading them anymore. So I had to learn a lot about myself during that time period and about the leader that I wanted to be. And I learned, not too long after that, about emotional intelligence and about self-awareness, and how important it was for me to have a good sense of who I am. And that helped me become a much better leader as I went forward into my career, because I was no longer worried about making everybody my friend, but I was more focused on getting to know them and meeting them where they were, so that way I could lead them the way that they needed to be led, and just instead of just trying to be everybody's friend.
So John, we'll unpack a little bit more of those steps you took in a little bit. So what did the actual the way that you tried to lead, what did it cost you? You already said that you lost that position. What are some other things that what was the price you paid for that decision?
I can honestly say the price was enormous. I mean, it cost me more opportunities to grow. It cost me reputation. It cost me individually. It cost me confidence in the belief of what I could do and what I was doing. It cost me like focus. Like, once I was no longer in that role, I don't really know that I wanted to stay. I knew I didn't want to stay in television long term, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So for the first time since probably I was 16 years old, I didn't know what was next, because everything had been so clear along the way of what was the next thing I wanted to do, what was the next thing I wanted to do. And I got to a point where I was just like lost. So, I mean, that's a great question of what did it cost me? I mean, it cost me a lot. And it took me a lot to build those things back, especially the confidence and the focus and the clarity. Because when you kind of get rocked to your core of who you thought you were, wasn't actually how you were showing up. And in many ways, it was seen as the opposite. It made me question, so many things about myself, and that's a tremendous cost.
So, John, one of the things that you talked about early on in your characteristics was about being kind, considerate, being that type of an individual. Well, when you're trying to be a friend with someone, it sounds like I would be kind and considerate. So, can you just help the listeners better understand where you went awry in this friendship sort of program that you were on before you got grounded in what it was in creating relationships, so that they have a better idea? We don't want people listening to think that you shouldn't be kind and considerate and develop friendly relationships, but obviously you went around it in a different way. So help us understand the contrast between that.
Yeah, what happened was me trying to be everyone's friend through kindness. It meant that I wasn't holding people accountable when they would do something wrong. I would I would be more worried about hurting hurting one person's feelings by correcting them or by coaching them a little bit harder. I got so worried about protecting people's feelings that everyone else on the team saw it as, well, I'm carrying my weight and they're not carrying theirs, but no one's helping them to carry their weight. So, and I thought it was kindness, but in reality, it was me not understanding what accountability really was. It was me not understanding that me thinking that I'm being kind was actually hurting them because they weren't getting the tools they needed to grow. There were other people on the team who I thought kindness was when they shined, I would just give them more reasons to shine. So when it was the big game of the night or when it was a major event, I thought I was being kind by giving certain people those, or if it was their favorite team that was playing, I would show kindness by giving them or signing them to that game. When in reality, the other people on the team were thinking, well, I want an opportunity to shine too. I want an opportunity to show that I can do the same things. I want an opportunity to be able to get the same spotlight that they're getting, but because it's their favorite team or because you like them better, then you're giving them all those chances and I'm not getting any of those chances. So that's what it ended up looking like. It ended up looking like that I was really favoring certain people when in reality, I kind of was, but it wasn't with the intention of harming others. It was with the intention of, hey, this is going to make you feel good tonight, so let me do that. And I didn't think about, and the reality is, like, you can't do that with everybody. You can't make everybody feel good all the time. So that made it challenging. It made it tough. And those are the things that really ended up kind of, submarining myself.
I appreciate you saying that, and what you just did was helped really define words that Ben and I use oftentimes in our teachings and our coachings, and that is to distinguish the difference between being nice and being kind. Niceness is that politeness. It's that, easygoing sort of spirit that you might have. Sometimes saying things, but not necessarily getting to the truth of it. Maybe it's what they want to hear. Being kind is telling people the truth in a way in which they can hear it, and helping them accomplish things and to helping them move forward. So really, it was really great that you were able to really, in your own words, capture the definitions of those words and help people understand what that may mean if they're starting to follow that same experience, because others can have that same experience that you did if they get distracted. And I like to think that with kindness, well, it's actually, I don't like to think, I do think that with kindness, the nice part comes with it. You have the manners, you have the relationship, you have the respect for people, but you're doing it in a much more intentional way than if you were just being sort of nice and, like you said, a little wishy-washy about it.
It's different on your journey south. If you'd stopped in, South Florida goes back to some northern roots in some area, but south, they have the "bless your heart" saying, right? And that's niceness, but not kindness, right? It's behind your back scenario. So
absolutely.
So what did you started getting into this, and then I stopped you a little bit, but what did you do then to correct that internally? I mean, there was a lot of internal cost to you. How did you then stop that mindset from happening? And then I'm gonna give you both questions, and because they sometimes get lumped together. And then how did you make it sure that you didn't do that again? Right. So what were the things that you did initially? I mean, you got removed with that position, but then I'm sure you got into other leadership eventually. So what did you do to make that change?
One of the first things I did was actually probably the scariest step that I could have taken, which was I talked to some of the people that were on my team, and I said, "Hey, I got some feedback that kind of stung. I got some feedback that I wasn't really showing up the way that you needed me to. Would you be willing to talk to me and give me examples? Would you be willing to share with me, like, what were some of the things that and I got some great feedback. People were more willing to share with me what it was because I asked, because I told them that I got feedback, and because they saw that I actually cared about it. These are people that I worked with every single day. These are people who were directly impacted by some of those decisions. And not once did anybody say, "Hey, John, what the hell are you doing?" Right? Not once did someone like raise their hand and say, "This doesn't feel fair." Not once did someone even talk to, like, another colleague and say, "Hey, he's, why is he doing this?" Right? So by taking that step, by taking the feedback and by asking the questions to people, I was able to get some like first person direct impacts of my actions. And so I banked those things, and I kept them in my mind of, I don't want people to feel that way. I don't want people to not trust me. I don't want people to not think that I'm advocating for them. And so if I ever get into another leadership position, then these are the things that I want to make sure that I do. So that was part of the self-study that I did. Then a couple of years later, complete game changer for not just my work, but my life, was I got introduced to EQ, to emotional intelligence. I went to a DISC seminar through one of the banks that I was working with. And it was just like, it was one of those things of, go here for this team building event Wednesday at 10 o'clock. I had no idea what I was walking into, but it was an absolute game changer. It helped me understand the dynamics of people. It helped me understand how people are built differently, how people think differently, how people experience the world differently. So I started to learn more about my self-awareness. And walking out of that seminar, I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but that's what I want to do. And so I just learned more and more and more about EQ, learned more and more about different personality styles, different personality models, and how that related to leadership. I started to be able to see those examples in people. And it really was, again, it was a game changer, because when I then got into leadership roles at the banks and got into leadership roles as I started to do consulting and coaching, I was able to use that as a foundation of getting to know people for who they were, and also knowing what my triggers are, what my blind spots are, where I shine and where I don't shine. And I was able to learn how to adapt to people and how to connect with people, how to meet people where they are, so I can lead them how they need to be led. That was the work that I did for myself, on myself. And that was the most important thing that I ever did in coming out of that journey, was not being afraid to ask the hard questions, not going in there to try to be defensive, but to really understand where I didn't show up the way that I thought I was showing up.
Feedback is always a gift unless it's delivered with a sword.
Absolutely.
And I love it. It's been a theme, especially with the guests that lead on this show. And I think that's how they become leaders, is that a lot of the folk, I think that's the major difference in folks that don't play the victim role, is that they allow the self-discovery, the questions they have, they get to know each other, and they reflect. That reflection piece is the big one. And so many other folks, and this allows you to be the victor. You move forward on it, whereas other folks would, oh, that's, everybody was against me, this situation, that situation. But then by you knowing this, and we are DISC people as well, and used help that within our organization. So we absolutely agree with that. When you have the behaviors and the assessments and the EQ side of things, it's not to be a badge, right? You don't, but it helps them understand themselves and how to relate to the outside world and other folks. So anybody listening, that's where we believe in those assessment styles, is that it's just to let you know where you're at and how you then can make those bridges that you need to have to communicate, to grow relationships, not just business, but just relationships in general.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the people that I worked with for a long time and was one of my mentors, she would often say, and she had strong background in DISC, and we also did Myers-Briggs, but she would often say labeling is disabling. And saying that in the context of, just because someone has personality traits does not mean, and even, even though we assign letters, it doesn't mean that they are completely that. It doesn't mean that that's the only thing that they bring. That's just a predominant element of what they may show to the outside world. But get to know that person, because if you just get to know a label, then you're not actually serving that person. You're just getting a sliver of it. So yeah, that's always been such a huge aha moment for me.
So John, we've got a couple of more things before we close out, but one of them we'd like to be able to get our audience to connect with you. So how can they reach out and find you?
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Troy. I think the two easiest ways to find me, one is on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time, which is linkedin.com/in/Big John Little. That's where I share most of my content. That's the way that I connect with a lot of people. The other thing that I have is a way for people to get in touch with me and for me to spend some time getting to know them is I have a leadership confidence assessment that I've developed. And that's available at hrlci.scoreapp.com. And that's just a quick 15-question assessment of really how an individual feels about their individual leadership confidence and also some of the confidence of leaders within the organization. But it gives a really good snapshot into areas where they're strong and where there's also opportunities. And from there, I get a chance to talk with people and do a little bit of a debrief and learn more about them and share a little bit more about what I do as a coach.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we know that you prepared for today a little bit by thinking through the questions that we were going to focus around the experience. But what was the question that you thought we would ask that we didn't?
I mean, I think the question would be, what should people do when they're starting their career as a leader? Especially since you said that your audience is generally early in their leadership career, and so that was a question that I thought may be coming, and I guess I should answer it too since I put the question out there. I think invest in yourself.
Absolutely.
Invest in yourself as a leader. The things that you are doing now, it's the foundation. Learn how to trust people and learn how to build trust within people so that way they can trust you. That's a foundation for everything. But just be a voracious consumer of things that will feed you as a leader, because we are in a time and space where leadership is absent in so many areas. And the more that you can stand out as a servant leader, as a people-focused leader, and really tying leadership to your brand as an individual, it's going to not only help you in your career, but leaders build leaders. And so you're going to have just a great network as you continue to grow in your career of people who you can rely on, people who can rely on you, and you're just going to serve the greater community even better. So just really focus on building up your leadership capabilities.
That's great.
Thank you.
All right. We end most of our programs, all of our Cohesion Culture programs, the same way. And Troy was going to start. We're gonna have some fun with this one with our delay.
We are. I thought maybe you'd start and then I'll end.
Okay. So you don't have to know everything.
You just need to be teachable.